Welcome to the Co-Movement Gym podcast, where we inspire people to move and live courageously. Today, it's me and Andy hanging out, and we're going to talk about vegetable oils.
Yes. I've been wanting to do this one for a while because I think it's, and you think so too, one of the most important things we could possibly talk about. And we'll get into why. But as far as when it comes to nutrition and the changes that I think people need to make, or the most important things that people can do to be healthy, knowing the dangers of vegetable seed oils and what they are, and taking the steps to eliminate them from your diet. I think that's the number one thing that people can do. And we'll talk about why that is in this episode.
Yeah. And that's an important statement for everyone listening. That we're talking number one.
Yeah. Because we all know there's a lot of stuff in the diet that, we eat too much sugar or, whatever, alcohol, things like that. But I'm saying I'm putting vegetable seed oils above all of that, and actually by quite a long way. I think it's the absolute worst thing in our modern food supply.
And as we're going to get into, it makes up a large percentage of the current diet. And a lot of it, and I feel bad for consumers that aren't aware of this, but a lot of it they're not aware of,
Oh yeah, right.
With what they're consuming.
And that's why we want to do this episode, is we want to make people aware of what these things are so that they can actually take them out of their diet.
Yep.
Yeah. But before I even started, I really wanted to say, I'm not a researcher or a scientist, either you, we're not doctors. The information that I get here is through tons of books that I've read, studies that I've read over, some of the experts in the field that I follow. I've watched their YouTube lectures. I've heard them talk on podcasts and stuff. So, I can credit a lot of people, but just throw out some names: Tucker Goodrich, Chris Kenobi, Paul Saladino, Peter Attia, Nina Teicholz, Ivor Cummins. There's a lot of people that are experts and actually do this research and compile it. And I've learned from them. So this is me standing on the shoulders of giants when I relay this information.
Sure.
But a lot of that stuff is incredibly technical. So most people aren't going to watch the same lectures or read the same books that I do. And that's why I want to do this episode, so that we can kind of spread their message far and wide.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, this is such an important topic that this episode is almost like a public service announcement.
Yeah.
Something people need to know.
You should have red flashing lights.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep my notes here just so I make sure I stay on topic and hit everything that I want to hit. But I was thinking to start with, so we're going to talk about the fact that, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of these experts, vegetable seed oils are the primary cause of pretty much all the diseases of civilization.
Wow.
So we're talking about heart disease, hypertension, stroke, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, obesity, all that kind of stuff that kind of plagues us in the modern world, and that was non-existent 200 years ago. And we'll talk about why. And that's kind of that's important to know, because a lot of people believe that vegetable seed oils are super healthy because they were they were fed to us as being heart healthy back in the 1950s.
I believe that, in the day.
Yeah, and that's why everyone got rid of eating butter for margarine, and stopped using saturated fats and go to vegetable seed oils instead. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and people are still a little bit confused about that. So we're going to try to clarify some of that here.
Awesome.
So before we talk about seed oils, I just want to touch on a couple of those diseases really quick, like heart disease, for example. It was almost non-existent 100 years ago. And I think the first reported myocardial infarction, heart attack was in the early 1900s, 1930s, 1920s, something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, 100 years ago, heart disease rates were nothing. Today, 1 in 3 people die of cardiovascular disease. So cancer,
1 in 3.
1 in 3, yeah.
A lot of people.
Cancer, same deal. Almost non-existent back then, very rare all the way up to 1900 or so. Today, 1 in 3 people die of cancer. Almost, it's a little bit below that. Diabetes, same deal. 1 in 300 people had diabetes back in 1950.
Okay.
And today it's almost 1 in 3 people.
Wow. In just 7 years.
1 in 3 people have pre-diabetes or diabetes.
Sure. They're on their way, potentially.
Yeah. So you can see the changes in the rates of all these chronic diseases and stuff. obesity, 1% of people in 1900 were obese. And today, 70% of people are overweight or obese. 35% are overweight, 35% are obese.
Sure. So as a species, these numbers are super scary.
Yeah. and it's insane. You know, humans have been on the planet for 200,000 years. And for the longest period, all the way up until about 1900, all these disease rates and stuff were insanely low, right? And now all of a sudden, the last 100 years, they exploded. So our question that we're trying to answer here is what changed? And, you know, in the diet, calorie consumption barely changed at all. We're eating the same amount of calories that we were 50 years ago, 100 years ago. The amount of carbs we eat hasn't really changed. The amount of protein that we ate hasn't really changed. Even the amount of fat that we ate hasn't really changed. Like nothing has really changed in terms of like how much we're consuming. So what did change? And the big thing that changed was the type of fat that we eat. So we're still eating the same amount of fat that we ate 200 years ago.
Sure.
But the type of fat that we ate changed drastically.
Amazing, because I would guess that like carbohydrate intake went up. And I would guess that calorie intake went up, right?
Yeah, lots of
obesity and different kinds of
calorie intake went up about 200 calories per day, which is pretty negligible.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. So you're talking the quality of a macronutrient fat is the factor here. Yeah, big time. Okay.
So, and that's the whole point of this talk. The type of fat that we ate changed drastically. And with massive consequences. So we're going to talk about how the type of fat changed. And basically, all the way up until about 1900 or so, most of the fats that we consumed were animal fats. So fatty cuts of fish, meat, whatever, butter, lard, tallow, all that kind of stuff, suet. And then around 1900 is when we started to eat vegetable seed oils. So they were invented in like right after the Civil War, like right around like 1865, 1870, something like that. That was cottonseed oil was invented. And after the late 1800s, after about the year 1900, their use skyrocketed. So they started to be used all over the place in everything. And then in the 1950s marketed as heart healthy, and we were told to eat more of them.
And this is perfectly correlated to the change in statistics for overall
Exactly. Yeah. You show like the heart disease rate, the cancer rate, the diabetes rate, all that stuff, the obesity rate. And then you plot like vegetable oil consumption rate. It was nothing for all of our history. And then in that last century, it went right up along with all those things we were talking about.
So we're going to keep diving super deep, but I want to, and I'm sure you'll get to this, but in the beginning of this talk, can we define the vegetable oils? So, because people I know are already listening, like, you know, well, what is he talking about? You know? So let's just list off some of the real bad ones so they get a nice, like, wrap their head around it, and then we'll keep going. So vegetable oils, the bad stuff. So first of all, I'm going to say vegetable oil is a terrible term. And it was almost like chosen. It was almost chosen because vegetable sounds healthy. For sure. Vegetables are healthy, right? It tricked me for a long time.
And none of them come from vegetables. So the term I like to use, and the term we should use, is seed oils. So from now on, we'll call them seed oils in this podcast. But these are soybean oil, cottonseed oil, canola oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil.
Palm oil? Is that one or no?
Palm oil is not the best, but that I wouldn't put that in this category. It's still one that I avoid, but that's not one of the seed oils.
So the oils you just named are pretty much the ones that take up the majority of the grocery store. With foods.
Absolutely. In fact, our main source of vegetable oils, you know, obviously everyone knows you can go and buy vegetable oils in like a container from the grocery store, and people use it in baking and stuff like that. You shouldn't. But, you know, so you can actually just buy a container of vegetable seed oil. But by far, our biggest source of vegetable seed oils just comes from processed foods. If you go and buy Pop-Tarts or cookies or, you know, microwave meals or even bread, like anything at the supermarket, and you look at the ingredients list, I guarantee it's going to say soybean oil or cottonseed oil or something like that somewhere on the list. And now might be a good time, because you're talking about like what are vegetable seed oils. Just to mention, some people will ask me, well, what about like avocado oil, or what about coconut oil, or what about olive oil?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I think you use olive oil and
use all of those.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is another place where the terminology isn't so good. Like I said, we shouldn't call seed oils vegetable oils.
Sure.
Because they don't come from vegetables. It's not like people are eating spinach oil or broccoli oil, right?
Yeah.
So likewise, those ones that I just mentioned that you use and that I use, they should be called fruit oils, because olives are a fruit.
Yep.
Avocados are a fruit. Coconut is a fruit.
Wow.
So
we're gonna
differentiate that a little bit, where the fruit oils are okay. They're fine for the most part. If you're eating avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, you're doing fine.
Okay.
It's the seed oils that I listed: soybean oil, cottonseed oil, corn oil, canola oil.
Yep. And for everyone listening or watching, write those down.
Yeah.
That list is important. And when you're grocery shopping or purchasing food, read the labels, and you will be shocked at the number of foods that are claimed health foods have this shit in there.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating.
It's insanely frustrating. Yeah. And once you start realizing that these are bad for you and you want to avoid them, you're going to go through your kitchen pantry at home and turn over, look at the ingredients on everything and be like, everything in my house has this crap in it.
Yeah, like healthy quote unquote salad dressing, right?
Yep.
Peanut butter, almond butter, like all these foods that most people deem as healthy can have a lot of these oils in there.
Yeah. And like we said, the main source of vegetable seed oils for most people is processed food. Processed food these days makes up 75% of the average American's daily calories. So if you're eating, 2,400 calories a day, then 1,800 of your calories are coming from processed food.
Yep.
And seed oils are 30% of the calories in processed food. So that's where we're getting like the vast majority of our seed oils.
So 20% of your diet almost would be from seed oils, calorie-wise.
Yeah.
Ish.
Yep.
Rough math.
Yep.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So yeah, avoid processed food. That's a big reason.
Yeah. So let's define that real quick. Processed foods for listeners, like food that's been processed, changed, stripped, broken down in a box, in a can.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I like to call it engineered food sometimes, because it comes from a food processing plant, a factory, as opposed to something that grows from the ground, fruits and vegetables, or an animal that was killed and slaughtered that you eat.
Yep.
So if it's not a natural whole food that just, an animal or a plant, and it's something that had to be created, there's no Pop-Tart tree out there.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And I also think like single ingredient foods are pretty safe, for the most part, as far as with these seed oils, because it has to be an additive, the seed oils.
You're not going to find any of these seed oils in natural whole foods.
Exactly.
They're not going to be in any animals, in any fruits, in any vegetables. They have to be manufactured from seeds.
Sure.
In a facility.
Huh.
So, all right. So given all that, we've talked about seed oils. We want to avoid them. We know we're eating way too many of them. They cause all these problems. Let's talk about why they're bad. So first of all, what we've covered right now, if people turn off the podcast and they get that and they say, fine, I'm done with seed oils, you're done. You can turn this off now. But if you want to know the why behind why we're trying to avoid these, that's what we'll get into next.
Yeah. And if you're looking to just, hack your health, right? Like Andy said, you could just stop now. We want you to keep listening, but it's important, like that one change moving forward will have a significant impact on your health.
I think it'll have the biggest impact of anything you can possibly do nutritionally.
I agree.